Hi. So I'm sorry, I had a little bit of technical difficulties. It told me that my computer was telling me it didn't connect, and I think I'm connected now. So I'm just going to start again. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen, and I'm back for another live stream brought to you by Princess Dental Staffing. So happy to be here with everyone today. If you are brand new and you're joining us for this live stream for the first time, welcome. So happy to have you here. And if you are part of my usual crew that joins us for these streams, welcome back, and so happy to have you here as well. So hope everything is going wonderfully today. And hello, Elsie. Did I say that right, Elsie? I hope I said that right. So hope everyone is having a wonderful day and you're making it through this hump day, and we're almost to the weekend, so hang on, you guys. So here's today's topic. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about how to follow up after you have an interview. Okay, so you've submitted your application, you've written your resume, you submitted your resume, and you've gotten that interview, you dressed up and got all gussied up, and you went out and you met maybe one interviewer, maybe several interviewers, and you think the interview went really, really well, you were really smooth, you had an answer for every question they had, and then you leave and now you play the waiting game, right? We've all done this. If you've ever had a job ever, we've all been here, right? We've all had this experience, right? You do the interview and then it's the waiting game, okay? So what we're going to be talking about today is how to follow up after an interview, okay? So now, first and foremost, step number one, before you leave the interview, try to get some business cards. Okay, so if it's one person interviewing you, before you leave, ask if you can have one of their business cards, or if you have multiple interviewers, ask if you can have multiple business cards, one for each. Okay, and if they don't have business cards, that's totally fine as well. Just make sure you get their names and perhaps an email address, or at the very least get their names, and that way you can actually follow up with them later. You know who to follow up with later. Okay, so. Hello, Sahar. I think it's Sahar. Hopefully I said that correctly. Hi, Ralph. Always super anxiety inducing to wait. Yeah, I know. It's definitely been on both sides of that. I've mentioned several times in a few previous videos that I was previous human resources. So I've definitely been an interviewee and I've definitely been an interviewer. So I know how anxiety inducing it is. But like I said, we're going to be talking about the correct way to follow up and how we can do that today. Follow-up can really set you apart from other candidates. Yeah, absolutely, Ralph. That's a great point to make. So you definitely want to make sure that, so especially if you think about a potential employer, and let's say they have maybe 20 applicants for one job, you definitely want to stand out of the crowd. And one of the ways to do that is by following up and making sure you're staying in contact. Not too much, and again, we'll talk about that here in a second, but you definitely want to make sure that you're staying in contact with your potential new employer, so they remember you and they can associate positive feelings with you, right? Okay. So step number one, again, get a business card. And if they don't have a business card, that's totally fine. Before you leave the interview, make sure that you can write down their names. You can even type it into your phone, or if you bring a pen and paper, you can just write it down and see if you can't get their email addresses as well. Okay. So step number two, send a thank you note. So some people might consider this a little bit old school, right? Not a lot of people send thank you notes anymore, but it really does help you stand out from the crowd. And it's actually kind of a good thing that it is a little bit old school and not everyone does it anymore, because it just kind of helps you stand out more, right? Just a short, quick little thank you note. You can send it via email. You can send it via snail mail, the old fashioned way, which is still, again, very classy. Even though it is old school, it's still very classy. So an example of what that might look like is, Dear John Smith, I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you to discuss my qualifications for the position of fill in the blank, dental assistant, what have you. I enjoyed learning more about the office and the position, and I believe I would be the perfect fit for this role. My experience in education reflects the duties of this role, and I believe I fit what you were looking for in a candidate. If you need anything else from me for further consideration, please let me know. I will be happy to provide anything I need to. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Sincerely, insert your name here. Okay, it's short, it's sweet, It lets them know that you are still interested. It lets them know that, you're actually, it could even let them know that your interest has become more, you're more interested in the position after meeting with everybody. And it also includes an invitation to reach out to you in case they need any other information. If there was a question that they forgot to ask you, or information that they forgot to obtain from you while you were there, it's a great way to invite them to reach out to you. Okay. So when do you send a thank you note? Within 24 hours after the interview. Okay. So you had the interview. So from the time you leave, 24 hours after, sometime in that time frame. Okay. And like I said, it can be via email, just like a short email note, or if you don't know their email addresses or didn't catch them on the way out or kind of forgot, you can also send something via snail mail. Get a little thank you note. They still sell them, I promise. I still have my stash of thank you notes. And just do a little short note, nice handwritten note, and just drop it in the mail. Okay. So step number 2, send out a thank you note. Okay. And I'm just going to read through some of these comments and questions here. Okay. The waiting period can be hard. Getting contact information to follow up is a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. I concur. That's why I meditate, LOL, reduce the anxiety. Yeah, absolutely. I like meditation as well, but it's definitely an exercise in patience, right? Just having to wait, and it's, normally a few days, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and you never really know. So, yeah, it's definitely an exercise in patience, right? Yeah, I don't want to seem too pushy, right? It's a fine balance. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely don't want to, pester the employer, which actually, Ralph, that is step number 3. Don't pester the employer. So in your interview, a lot of the times in interviews, at the very end of the interview, the person interviewing or the people interviewing you will give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you want to ask. And one of the questions that you definitely want to ask is, you want to say something like, what are the next steps, or when can I expect a follow-up, or something to that effect. Okay. I personally like, what are the next steps, because, it kind of leaves it open for there to be, more to the application process, right? Sometimes the interview is not the last part. Normally the interview is the last step, but not always. Okay. So I like that. What are the next steps actually kind of leaves it open for them to say, okay, well, next we're going to do, final interviews, or, do a quick phone screen or something like that. Okay. So, make sure that you ask what the next steps are. If they're not quite sure, they're kind of hazy on the details, or maybe you just forgot to ask, the rule of thumb is you want to wait about a week after your interview. Okay. And again, I know that's kind of nerve wracking to wait that week, but I promise you, like I said, I've been on kind of both sides of the interviewing, and when you have that many people to interview and you have all these considerations and everything, it does take a little while to kind of go over all that information and decide, where you go from here. If you want to do one more interview or one more phone screen or something like that, or just deciding on the best candidate. I mean, if you've got a pool of 20 applicants, that takes a long time to kind of go through. So I know it's a little bit nerve wracking, but normally about a week is the kind of the rule of thumb here. Okay. And I've definitely, honestly, personally, I've definitely had those applicants that have followed up every day, every, 24 to 48 hours or things like that. And that's really something that you kind of want to stay away from, because, again, when you send those thank you notes, when you follow up and all those sorts of things, it really helps you stand out and it helps you be remembered, but you want to make sure you're being remembered in a good way, right? You want to make sure that you are associated with positive thoughts and feelings, right? So you don't want to pester and you don't want to nag. You just kind of want to follow up, like I said, about a week after your interview, and that way you're not you don't seem like you're kind of pestering, or because it can kind of come off as desperate. So you definitely don't want to go down that route. Okay. So, so you definitely want to make sure that you follow up, but like I said, probably about a week afterwards. Okay. And you can actually follow up with a phone call. Phone call is totally fine. And actually it can be a little bit better to actually, follow up with a phone call, because it shows, potential employers that you're not afraid of being on the phone. You're not afraid of conversing via the phone as opposed to, a short email or a text or something like that. It's a little bit more personable, and again, kind of shows the potential employer that you are interested in the position. Okay. So, so when you go to follow up, make sure that you are doing a phone call, and, make sure that you're trying not to call when the office is very busy, right? Because so normally, more often than not, rule of thumb is dental offices are going to be a little bit busy in the mornings and in the evenings. Those are kind of the coveted like appointment spots, right? And normally around lunchtime as well, right? Because those are going to be the times when most people are going to want to schedule their appointments, right? Because, if you work a regular 9 to 5, that's kind of normally when you're going to want to schedule your appointments. So try not to call during peak hours, maybe late morning or maybe early afternoon, right around 1:30 or after, somewhere around there. Try not to call during peak hours. Of course, you can't always gauge it. Sometimes the days get kind of crazy, right? So, but if you do call and, the person you want to speak with, the interviewer or the hiring manager or whoever it is that you want to speak with is busy, just leave a short note or a short voicemail or a message or something like that, just saying, hey, say your name. Make sure you say your name, right? Because if you've got quite a few applicants, you might need a little bit of a reminder as to, who is calling. So just make sure you leave your name. Just say, hey, I was just calling to follow up on this interview I had a week ago. Still really interested. Please give me a call back at your earliest convenience at, say your name, or say your phone number, excuse me, or your email address as well. So you can do that as well. Okay. So just going to go through some of the comments here. Sorry. Well, honestly, I never even thought about sending a thank you note. That's such a great suggestion. Yeah, like I said, it's a little bit old school, but I think it's a little bit classy. So yeah, definitely send a thank you note, and you can kind of sneak a little bit more information in there if you want to, like you're still interested, or, reach out for questions or further information or something like that. I wish I was better at writing letters, and thank you notes not my strong point. You can definitely, you can absolutely kind of Google to get some ideas on how to write that. I wouldn't say, Google it and then just copy. You might run into some legal issues there. But you can definitely Google some thank you notes and kind of read some and kind of get an idea of what you can put in your thank you notes. Okay. And like I said, I read an example earlier, so that's kind of an example as well. So it kind of gives you a good idea. Do you recommend pen and paper over technology for note-taking during an interview? Can having technology present help or hurt you during an interview? I'm thinking about when I ask for contact information for the follow-up. So that's actually a great point. Even in 2020, being on your phone and kind of doing this, it's still kind of viewed negatively, like you're kind of like streaming on social media or, kind of playing around, playing games or something like that. So it can be, that's actually a great point. Even today, you can be seen as kind of wasting time if you're on your phone. Even though there are tons and tons of apps on your phone, and you can get your email on your phone, and there are tons of ways to be productive on your phone, but yet and still, there's still that kind of stigma attached to it, right? You're on your phone, and obviously you're not paying attention, or you're playing around or wasting time and things like that. The way I combat that is, so if I am going to use my phone, I usually say what I'm using it for, so people understand that, I'm not just kind of playing around, or I'm not ignoring you or something like that. So I can say, if you're in an interview and you say, oh, can I get your contact information real quick, if they don't have a business card, you can say, may I have your contact information? I'm just going to type it in my phone real quick. So they know that you're not, playing around, or it doesn't look unprofessional or something like that. Having said that, there are studies that show that writing something down actually helps you remember it better. So it really just kind of depends. If you're going to use pen and paper, that's totally fine. If you're going to use your phone, like I said, I would announce what I'm about to do before I get on my phone, so that they know you're paying attention and that you are invested. Okay. What do you think about following up on LinkedIn? So I'm very pro LinkedIn, actually. I am very pro LinkedIn. I'm absolutely pro having a profile, updating your profile, making sure your profile is optimized and all those sorts of things. You never know where an interview can come from, but you can absolutely follow up on LinkedIn. Yeah. I would probably prefer their business email over their LinkedIn. But it just depends. If you connected via LinkedIn, that's totally fine. But I normally prefer their business email because they're more likely to check their business email on a regular basis, right? In dentistry, are there often multiple interviews for a position? Not quite sure what you mean. Like, are they interviewing multiple people for one position? Is that what you're asking? Because if so, yeah, absolutely. You normally you want to narrow down the people that you want to interview. You want to screen them first, and then you want to narrow them down depending on how many you have, because interviews take a long time, right? Like a 30-minute interview, and you've got 10 people. That's 5 hours that you have to set aside from your regular duties, right? So you definitely want a smaller group of interviewees, but a lot of the times, they will interview several people for one position. Yeah, absolutely. Phone calls can be so awkward. Practice, Ralph. Absolutely. Practice your phone calls. Before I get on these live streams, I practice my heart out. So I know sometimes I can do a lot of like, well, and I kind of do that kind of stuff, but I definitely try to at least practice the outline before I get on here. So practice makes perfect. Okay. Probably not best to catch people at lunchtime. Everyone deserves a nice break. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I wouldn't call around. I normally try not to call around between 11:30 and like 1:30. It's normally because the office needs a lunch break, and then sometimes lunchtime can be a little bit busy as well, because that's when a lot of people want to set their appointments as well, right? Then it's like, did they put me off because they're really busy or because they didn't want to hire me? LOL. Yeah. And, like I said, try not to call during peak hours, and that way you're more likely to talk to someone. Um, so yeah, so that's what I would kind of do. Yeah. Lunch is important. Absolutely it is. Um, as in multiple rounds of interviews. Sometimes. So you're asking if they do multiple interviews for one position? Sometimes. Um, It depends. Sometimes if it's kind of like a larger applicant pool and there are a lot of people that you want to interview, sometimes you can do second interviews. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can actually do multiple interviews if it's kind of a close call between candidates, right? Like, so it's like, oh, I kind of want this person, but I kind of want this person as well. They're both really awesome. Maybe we should do one more interview just to make sure that we're getting the best person. So yeah, absolutely. You can have multiple interviews. Occasionally that does happen. Uh, that's a good point. Sometimes people don't always check their LinkedIn account and they may miss your message. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I say business email address above LinkedIn. But if you connected on LinkedIn, that's totally fine. But I would prefer a business email. Okay. So let me get back to my steps. So step number 4 was call the employer and ask for a status update. Okay, give them a call. Okay. And number 5 is to ask to shadow. So if, it's taking a little bit longer than you like, for them to make a decision, maybe it takes 2 or 3 weeks, you can always call up and ask to shadow. Now, they're not always going to let you. Maybe they're a little bit too busy or something like that. But it's always good to call and ask if you have the availability to do so, just because it shows that you are interested in the position, and that you're interested in kind of seeing how the operations of the office work. Okay. So absolutely, that's a great way to still show your interest. Just be aware that normally job shadowing like that, especially in the interview phase, is normally not paid. Okay. So if you have the time and you're available, that's definitely a consideration, but it's definitely a good tip to ask if you can. Okay. Let's see some more comments. And when they offer you the job 3 to 4 weeks later, it's because they offered the job to someone else who turned it down or didn't work out. LOL. Yeah, sometimes that can happen. Yeah, absolutely. But if you Actually, one of the FAQs I have is how many times you follow up after an interview. And I normally follow up once, one time after an interview, just depending on the response of the person when I call. Okay. So yeah, if it's 3 to 4 weeks later, well, if you're still available, that's, you know, that's still a great thing. You were still in their top, two, top three, top five, right? But when you follow up after an interview, I normally recommend doing it once, and depending on the response that I get, I might follow up one more time. Okay, so say for example, you follow up after a week, and the person that you speak to, say the hiring manager, say it's a hiring manager, they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we kind of got behind, or we've been swamped, or something like that." It shows that they need somebody else, right? Firstly. So I might follow up one time after that, or if they don't get back to you, or they're not being very communicative, I might not follow up after that. But if they call you, if they actually return your call, and if they're actually very open and transparent with you about where they're going or where they are in the application process or something like that, I might follow up one more time. But definitely when it comes to job hunting, you definitely want to have irons in the fire. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. At least that's kind of my recommendation. Is that a sign I should not take the position? Oh, if they offer it 3 to 4 weeks later, that's completely up to you. So sometimes that happens. I've had that happen tons of times where, it was a close call between first and second applicant, and the first applicant, for whatever reason, maybe they got another job, or maybe they didn't, they wanted too much money or something like that. So sometimes that happens. And if you're their second choice, hey, you're second out of 20, 30, 40, 50 people. So that's still not a bad spot to be in. So if it's, if you are still amenable to that, yeah, absolutely. Could be a sign that you don't want to work with a non-communicative employer. Yeah, absolutely. So you follow up once and they're not very communicative with you, or they're kind of vague, or they don't call you back after you leave a message or something like that. Yeah, that's definitely a sign they're not very communicative. So they might not end up being your number one choice, right? So yeah. So just getting back to these FAQs. So who do you follow up with after an interview? That is a great question. So normally what I would do is in the interview, when you're asking about next steps, I would ask, okay, so who can I follow up with? So, if it's just one person interviewing you, could I follow up with you in a week or so? Or if it's more than one person, you could say, okay, who would be the best person to follow up with in about a week or so in case I haven't heard anything, or something like that. So I would probably ask that in the interview. If you forgot to ask that, though, there's normally at least one person that you've kind of been working with pretty consistently throughout the application process. So you can also ask that person. You can call them or shoot them an email and just kind of ask them, how are things going? Okay. So last FAQ, what does a second interview mean? So I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. I think it was Elsie who asked, what do multiple interviews mean? So sometimes a second interview, like I said, means they just had a very large applicant pool and they just need a little bit of extra time to kind of narrow it down a little bit more. It can also mean that, their top group of applicants are really, really close and they'd love to hire them all, but they only have one opening. So let's do one more interview to see, to kind of break the tie between them or something like that. So yeah, there are definitely reasons to do a second interview, or maybe that was the plan from the get-go. Again, if you have like a larger applicant pool and you kind of want to narrow it down, you need steps in the application process to kind of narrow down the pool a little bit more to get that top group of applicants. So, second interview can mean several different things, but the most important thing it means is that you are still being considered. So that's the important thing to remember. Okay. So that's a little bit about a second interview. Okay. So these are some really great questions and insights, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, so if you're one of my repeat offenders, you're part of my regular audience, you know that we normally do these live streams on Wednesdays. But if you're brand new, again, we do these live streams normally on Wednesdays at noon Mountain Standard Time. That's 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, and 11 a.m. Pacific. Okay. So if you don't want to miss any of the upcoming streams, be sure to subscribe to our channel or like our page. And if you enjoyed this content, you found it really helpful, be sure to drop us a like or a comment. If you have any other thoughts or insights, any other questions about this topic, again, feel free to drop us a comment and we'll get back with you with an answer for you. Okay. But thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in with me today and being an awesome audience and asking all these great questions and commenting all these great insights. We will be back next week on Wednesday with another live stream. Until then, everybody take care and be safe out there. I know a lot of places are starting to open up a little bit more, so be sure that you're being safe out there. Okay, so I will talk to you next week. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye.